because very much what this is intended to be is that the USC is very broad and there's a lot to it that even I, heading into my role, didn't necessarily understand every single piece of it. I was at this very chat about this time last year, came in as someone trying to just learn and receive it all. So I might even give some kind of points of like what I wish I received more at that time last year, given where I am now. So I guess let's do a quick intro. Melissa spoke about kind of her, and then obviously being a staff member in the USC, all go to me. And then, so I'm the current president for the USC, having ran in an at-large election, and learning every single day more and more about how incredible this organization is. So that's me, Matt, and I use he, him pronouns, and I will turn it to Mark.
Awesome. So I'm Mark. I'm the VP Gov Finance for the USC. I also use he, him pronouns. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm here as Matt's support because I know he gets to pop out a couple times. So I'll throw it over to Jeff.
Great. Hi, everyone. I have, my name is Jeff Farmer. I'm what they call the Chief Operating Officer. Basically what that means is that I've been here for a long time and I know where all the stuff is hidden. So that's basically why they keep me around. My role here is to both provide support to the full-time staff contingent here, whether it be in the food and beverage department, Melissa, the senior management, otherwise just keep things running and smooth on that side, but student-led. And then also do the same for the executives. A lot of student associations across, well, everywhere, employ, I don't know whether it's on purpose or otherwise, ignorance sometimes is bliss, and we don't believe that here at the USC. We want knowledgeable, intelligent, good discussion around the issues and an understanding of what the impact can be from decisions that are being made. And that's really what my job is. Not to bury the executive in deciding what type of cheese they're going to put on the burgers, but instead, how is mental health and COVID affecting the student population right now? What are we doing to improve our relationships with stakeholders on campus and otherwise? So although I have a very operational role, that role is really to kind of keep that chaos at bay from what the real student voice is, provide student leadership to the full-time staff side so that we're making sure we're student-led and we're making a difference in everything that we do, whether it be a concert or, like I said, the cheese on the burger, but not making Mark literally sit down there and slice cheese every single day so he doesn't get to do the work that is actually student-led work. So I'm kind of like a GP, a general practitioner doctor. I know a little bit about a lot of things, whereas Melissa is more a specialist who knows a whole lot about a specific area, but maybe doesn't know the wider breadth of things. Not to say that, you know, if she had exposure to it, she would be brilliant, I'm sure. But like she's a specialist, and I'm more of the GP that says, this sounds like it's in this area, and you should probably, let's get these people in the room to have the conversation so that you get the best information. I'll leave it at that.
Great. Yeah. And then I guess as a quick, then I can let's start with Emily and just kind of, for quick introductions, we all know kind of who we are and where we are on this campus, and then we can move into kind of the content. So Emily, take it away. And then just each person pass it to another person on your screen.
Yeah, I'm Emily Petch. I'm a third-year student in nutrition and dietetics at Brescia. I sit on USC as a Brescia counselor through my position as Brescia president on student council.
And then I guess Paula.
Paula. Forgot to throw it over.
That's all good. Hi, I'm Paula. I am Brescia's student council CCO. I'm in my final year of a double major in psychology and criminal justice with a French certificate with main campus. I will pass it over to Haley.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Haley. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in my third year of Media and the Public Interest, which is a subprogram in the Faculty of Information and Media Studies. Currently, I sit as the AVP of Public Affairs under Cam Wong at the USC. Excited to be here and learn more. I'm going to toss it over to Callista.
Hello, I'm Callista. I am Haley's coworker as the Associate Vice President Communications for the USC, so I also work for Cam. And I'm a final year student studying international relations, and I will pass it on to Eunice.
Hi everyone, I'm Eunice. I'm in my fourth year. I'm doing political science and a minor in transitional justice. I'm on SSC and various involvements with the USC too. I will pass it off to Jeremy.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. We're a bit of a strange inclusion here, but my name is Jeremy, and I'm the Vice President of Student Services for the Society of Graduate Students. So we're grad students here at Western.
I'm Danica Faca. I am Jeremy's fiance, but I'm also the SOG's Vice President Academic at the Society of Graduate Students, and we're both finishing our PhDs. But we're here just to learn more about the USC governance side to perhaps inform how we're structuring SOGs. Thank you, Billy. Yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah, we're as Jeff alluded to, we're also trying to build our transparency and lack of ignorance at our own societal structure. And so when I saw that these information sessions were going to be hosted, I was like, oh, perfect. And I'm happy to jump in and learn more about what your team does. So.
Sounds great. Yeah, and it's great. It's great. I saw you guys pop in, and I'm like, it's great to see some friends on. So that's unreal. Amazing.
Yeah, and welcome. And now that I've said that other student associations don't do it, I feel like an idiot. But let me, and I'm not backing off that statement because I do believe the way we do things here is really great. But every student association kind of finds its own groove or otherwise as to how things work. They also have different operations or things that they focus on. So like, for example, Holland College is like a trade school out east. They're very, very focused on services. They don't have any operations whatsoever. So that is different. Where the USC is unique is that it has an extremely wide breadth of what it offers. Everything from like concerts with 13,000 people at it, to a food bank featured on Google, to a robust council board of directors. Like there's 2 different oversight bodies that all feed out of one that get voted and some get hired. And it's awesome and complicated and amazing. And I drink lots of coffee.
Oh man, amazing. Okay, so just I guess, and as Mark alluded to, I'm going to be a little bit in and out. So I'm going to be on until about halfway through, and then I have to pop out for a bit and then I'll be back in. But with all that said, we're going to be kind of starting up here. And I guess, and I saw in the chat too, obviously big shout outs to another student union that is present on our, I just saw that pop in there, but is also present here being our BUCSC representative. So great to have you both here as well. And then I guess we'll start in, and Melissa, if you can go to the next slide where I think we have our mission and things along there. Perfect. Yeah. So I'm going to let Jeff kind of start off here because these were something that was stemmed from our last, or have been refined over years, but happened within our last strategic planning process with ADVOCACY, and Jeff was kind of around for a lot of that as well. So I'm going to let him take this slide. So I will turn it there.
Yeah, that's great. And also just let's do a little bit of Zoom rules here, because when we're in presentator mode like this, I can only see like 4 other people. Because I'm not a co-host as well, maybe Melissa, just literally interrupt me if someone puts their hand up, okay? Like I assume you can see the hands up, or someone can, just that would be great. And don't hesitate to interrupt. It's like, that tells me you're interested, which is super exciting. Is that fair, Matt? Is it the way you want to go about it?
Perfect. Beautiful.
So the USC is a non-share capital, not-for-profit corporation. We have always, the mission statement is something that's kind of been tweaked a little bit and we've had for a long time. We did a strategic plan in 2017 was when it was ratified. And we added our vision statement, which was something that I felt was really important for the staff side of things. It's important for everyone, but for the staff coming in here every day, the vision is kind of the why of what we're doing. Any of you that follow Simon Sinek and want to hone in to kind of get people excited about the mandate, or the reason behind what you're doing, stating the why. And our belief is that students have the power to change the world, and whether that be a student who never knows that the USC is actually touching them, but just benefits from having a bus pass, and they can live in more affordable housing away from campus, and that makes it easier on them in order to like come to school and go to grad school and develop, a cure for the common cold. That's changing the world. And we believe that little bit of what's in the mission statement, which I'll go to next, which is the why is the vision, the how is the mission statement. And we do that. We believe that students have the power to change the world. And because of that, we do that through enhancing the educational experience and quality of life for all undergraduates at Western University. So enhancing the educational experience does not mean that we're responsible for making sure the in-class experience is better. We definitely advocate and make sure that that is something, but it's not ours to do. We just want to make sure that everything outside of the in-class experience is maximized so that students have less stress, have outlets, make peer-to-peer connections, which is why we do everything from orientation week to peer support, etc. And then, of course, we have values, and this is the way we go about things. We're democratic, we're inclusive, we're student-led in all facets of the organization. There is nothing that is hidden from the student leadership. If Mark walks into my office and says, I want to read the manual on your point of sale system for the spoke, cool, there's the manual. If that's how you want to spend your time, then absolutely, it's right there for you. We're accountable, and the executive create a roadmap at the start of their year, which they present to council that tells them what they're going to be doing. And therefore council can hold them accountable to that or ask questions or know what's going on. They don't just go into their box and not, you know, the staff are accountable as well through myself to make sure that we're making things easy for the executive and for the students in general. Those are our customers. And if that's not the case, then staff are, you know, accountable to that. And we operate with integrity, which I think you're kind of hearing through what my voice is here. That is probably the most important thing in other student associations where there's no real regulatory body. It is quite easy to stray a little bit when you have yearly turnover or you have access to all the funds and all the rest of it. That integrity and oversight from the students that have given us these funds is super important. So we live those values every single day. The mission statement is something that is near and dear to us, and the vision statement is written anywhere and everywhere that we can. And you know, during O Week, you can hear the president who has, you know, 3 weeks in incorporating that into their speech, believing that students have the power to change the world, because all the staff do.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. Yeah, and I guess in that end, and I guess one thing my brain was just spinning on that, so I'm going to stop there before I go into this, is that when Jeff says that and when that the students like obviously hear that, and I know to some degree it can be a bit of a cliche when we see that on the wall, or if you've ever been in the offices here at the USC, but when even in my year here, the amount of people you learn about who've come through these doors one way or another are playing roles that change the world. There's incredible people, and I don't mean that just within USC executive. I mean just people who funnel in this in one way or another. That's something we really do truly believe in, and I think it's something that just astounded me as I got to know this organization more and more. So yes, and I guess into the about for this series, the main thing, obviously, with the entire sequence that that we've been working, that Melissa has been incredible to help sort out and coordinate with all of our different sessions. This one is one that I think is extremely important, and it's great to see you all here, and that the USC is kind of like an iceberg. I'm going to use that analogy, is that there's a lot that you'll see very, very deliberately. It's very easy to notice, but there's a lot more kind of under the surface that we are actively trying to show more. And it's an ongoing process because we are so proud of what it does, but just when it's so large and there's so much there, students will only be familiar with certain parts of that iceberg. So whether that be, yeah, and as we'll be going through this, that is what this is all about, is basically revealing all that we can about how it works. Because also if you're debating running for literally any position you'd run for, this is extremely helpful background, because if ever asked questions or anything that may come up, you'll have a lot more depth and understanding of what we actually do. So I guess my kind of tip is, like, when I was here last year, I think I had decided to run like a week before, or like 10 days before, if that. It was very recent after I decided to run that I went to this. So I didn't really know exactly what to look for, but I would say just think about all the things that like maybe you already know, but then note the things that maybe are like, oh my God, like they run a movie theater, or they run whatever. Like there's a lot there that you may just poke out. So really kind of be deliberate about receiving some of this new information. And please, this is my biggest point, ask questions. Jeff is someone, and like anyone who's part of this call, but Jeff is someone who's been with this organization for many years, but in his COO role as well for several, and has just an unbelievable depth of knowledge across anything. So if there's any piece of this that you're curious of, definitely just interrupt us and ask. So I guess that's the main thing I wanted to put there. But, and then I guess in a more direct sense, with you building like platforms of some form or whatever it may be that you're running with, this will allow you to really kind of see all that we encompass. So you can also picture, you can understand what you need to focus on, because there is also some confusion. I remember this being a student too, and debating running, is that kind of finding the line of what is specifically admin, because there are some things that people have run on that aren't actually USC decisions. So I think it's very important to also understand what we can actually dictate very directly as like a project and something we can change. If it's more admin, it's more of an advocacy piece, which is still very important. But we just figured this is a very helpful thing for you to kind of understand that line and some of that discernment there. So yeah, that's pretty much, I guess I wanted to give a bit of a context piece there in terms of what this is for. And it's also literally whatever you want. You can take whatever you need to from this, but we hope it's helpful. So from there, we'll go into the organizational structure. So I have a couple minutes left, so I will just hop in here for the first couple, and then I will turn it to Jeff for the next. So I guess within the structure, there are these four main, and I guess the one that isn't listed here, but is also the most critical of them all, is students. So with that being said, that students are the biggest part of what we do, and we are, as we said, student run and student driven. But in terms of the actual kind of structure, if we were to break it down of the USC, is that there is council, which is the ultimate bosses of the executive team. But then there's also the board, which is, so there's, and I remember this was really confusing, so I'll just, for a second, there's the board of directors, which is USC, which is students who are hired by will of council, but are the ones who kind of safeguard a lot more of some of them are corporate side of things within our organization. But then there's also the board of governors, which is what runs the like the Western University institution. So just, I know it's a one-word change, and I know even at different, like at affiliate student councils or at any other number of other institutions, there's a variety of names for what these each are, and it's just a choice of words. So whenever we say board of directors, it's students. And then if you ever hear people running for board of governors or anything like that, that is admin and that side of things. So that was something that I always grappled with for a while. So I wanted to pause there for a second. So yeah, so those are kind of the two main there. We also have staff, which is represented. We have Melissa and Jeff here. Jeff is the one who very much is the kind of lead point on a lot of the staff employees. And then the executive obviously is the one that I am most familiar with, being one of them. And we also have Mark on as one of them as well. So I guess within that, they're all play different roles. Some exist at kind of will of others. But I guess I will stop there, and I'll turn it over to Jeff too, in case you have anything to kind of add, poke at within that org structure as well.
Yeah, no, I don't, other than maybe just this graphic doesn't really show order of importance, except for that the staff are at the end for sure. Council probably sits higher up in terms of the authority level. The board exists, as Matt said, at the will of council. That was done deliberately in order to split the fiduciary responsibility. So council may advocate for reduced fees, or that driving the organization in a way that a board of directors may not want to take it. But that's why having council as the highest body driving the board and the staff to come up with a solution, even if it's not one that a for-profit entity would make, makes a lot of sense. The other thing that the board of directors provides is that sober second thought, right? It provides that ability for both the executive, the staff, to a lesser extent the council, because they don't really interact directly with it, but like to make sure that we're on good ground with things, that we have good oversight. So like when you see what happened at Ryerson, where money was flowing wherever and there was chaos, and I mean, you can just Google it and find it. There was no oversight on what was going on, except for like there was elections, and then there was like a year, and then there was elections, and nobody was really watching what was going on with the organization in between there. If there was a problem, the board chair sits as part of council and can actually report on that to the greater council. There's checks and balances absolutely everywhere within the organization, which is the thing that I love the most about it. It gets all that drama and politics out of the way and just allows everyone to focus on their jobs that they've got and trying to drive forward the student voice. So other than that, Matt captured it really, really well.
And also I'm about to have to pop out, but I also turned to Mark because he also is, and I guess for context, like where Mark will go into it on his own, but he also is one of the student executives that plays a more intimate role with kind of the both sides of, not that we always struggle to call it the corporate and the political side, but the kind of two kind of main versions of what the USC actually operates. So he also is very directly playing with both sides of that organization, as am I. So I guess I'll turn it to Mark as I skirt out nice and discreetly to see if he has anything else to add to this, or if not, then we can move on.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think the only thing I'll add on to this, and similar to Matt said, I deal a lot with the policy and the jurisdiction of both council, board, and the executive. So that's kind of where my role falls in this jurisdiction. I would say that the councils themselves, and I know Emily probably saw this last time we talked about bylaw 1 at GNF, is council themselves are the members of the corporation, not students at large. So if we were to have an annual general meeting, we wouldn't have 35,000 students show up. We would have all the councilors show up. And that's how our corporation is set up. It's pretty rare in the actual industry itself of student organizations, but it works well for us just because of the sheer number of students we represent, just because councils are elected by those students. So that's the only clarification I'll make, because that's pretty specific to bylaw 1, but it does kind of change our organization in a way different than others. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So I can jump on the org structure piece of this. So the way that we're set up, this is kind of where we were talking about before. So this is the visual example of how this works. It does get very confusing. I tried to explain this to many people. A lot of people don't get it. But if you have questions, either ask myself or Matt. We explain this very often. So Western students are the ones that elect Matt as the student at large, and they also elect the counselors that sit on our council. And then we'll get into VP roles later on and how those are elected. But currently, the way our structure works is the executive kind of drives the organization forward and is accountable to council, and the board of directors are also accountable to council. So you'll see the council is kind of the central body that has all the ties, and then the staff of the USC fall under the board and also interact with the executive. Jeff, do you want to add anything on the staff piece interaction with that?
No. The line that you see in the middle is really just like the voice of the students. That's why the staff are off to the side, because we don't really provide any input. It's also why the board of directors, although they're super important, are really low down, because they really shouldn't have an opinion themselves. As I said, they're a sober second thought, whereas that voice of the students is at the top. That big bubble at the top is like, what are the students saying? And I know that's something council struggled with for years, is how, after they're elected, how do they check that they're still re-engaging with that student voice? That being said, I know that the executive do quite regularly, and then the staff just wait to see what that direction is and then try and make it happen.
Awesome. Melissa, do you want to switch to the next one? Yeah. So I'll switch to, this is more on my and Matt's domain. So executive, the executive is what you've seen probably most on the student-facing side. You elect Matt as your president, and then you have the two internal VPs that are elected through council. So that's the VP and University Affairs and the VP External. So I'll get a bit more into that structure later on. And then you see the 3 hired positions. So obviously we have 2 AVPs on this call already. So one of them is Cam, who falls in the communications. My role itself is the governance and finance. And then you have Hannah, who does the student supports and programs. Those are all hired through a joint student at large and council board of hiring. And then you see that's kind of where our executive falls. The workflow is kind of, we're all full-time employees for the USC. Matt leads the direction because of his elected position, and he kind of delegates down to the VPs to do more of the groundwork itself. And it kind of count on us. Like it says here, the executive council is kind of the driving force of what happens. So a lot of the direction that comes to Jeff and his team on the staff side comes from, let's say Hannah wants to do something out on Brofdale, which you saw with the bagel pop-up. Jeff would take that and go with it, but it's Hannah that's driving that direction. And that's kind of where you'll see the interaction between the executive and the staff. And the executive is also accountable to council on that piece. So we tie back to council and the work they want to see done through the executive. And that's where you see a lot of the motions and the more formal governance structure come from. Flip the next. Awesome. Yeah, so now to detail it, I kind of described them quickly, but I'll give an example of each portfolio and maybe something you would have seen them do. I won't try to preface I know, or will explain everything that they do, because they do different things every day. I know myself, I probably jumped 4 different files in 20 minutes. So that's the premise I'll give to this. But Matt as a president kind of sets strategic direction. He's really not always doing the groundwork of what he wants to do, but he wants to see some certain things. Let's say he wants to see sustainability happen. Matt's setting that kind of guideline, and then the executive and the staff are following along. And he's also managing our team. So we're a group of 5 as a VP team, but we all answer to Matt as the president. But he is involved in that team as a group of 6. So I'll premise that he works a lot with Jeff and the board of directors to manage the staff end of that. And he does play a very important role in both the political and corporate side, as Matt had referenced it. So then the next part of this is the vice president external. So you'll see Mackenzie does a lot of work with the external groups. So USA is the one I reference, and then also UCRU, which is the federal body. So those are the more lobbying bodies within the provincial and federal governments. But she also does municipal work with the City of London as well, and works with her AVPs and coordinators to try to facilitate some of those conversations, and does a lot more advocacy work on that end. And then I'll flip over to the other side of her role, which is University Affairs, which does a lot more kind of administration advocacy. So you'll find this was a role that happened last year when they split their two roles. So we had a vice president, which was Kat Dunn last year, that split into two different roles between external and university, just because the priorities were different in both instances. And it allowed for a bit more conjugation. And so if you have a Proctor Track issue, you'll likely go to Vic. But if you have a funding issue through the federal government, you're going to go to MAC. So that's the big difference between the two of them. And then I'll flip over to the hired side now, which is the bottom three. So I had mentioned what Hannah kind of does. I won't try to premise her role into one sentence because she does probably 20 different things, but she manages a very large team of associates and coordinators. Most of it is more around student supports and programs. Obviously, like some examples are ethno, ISS, sort of international support on that end, but she also does a lot of the large scale events. So if we had any large scale concerts, she would do a lot of the work with that, and Jeff on the staff side to plan some of those productions. She also does orientation week, which is a big endeavor that we take on at the USC, working with the university on that. And I'll flip to Cam for the Vice President Comms and Public Affairs. Cam does a lot of the branding of the USC. Again, I won't try to plaster her into one comment, but she does a lot of work on everything that comes out of USC from a product placement kind of perspective. Haley and Calista can probably comment on all the work they've done. Anything coming out of the USC from a public stance, internal documents, editing, all the graphics, all the communications are all through Cam's portfolio. She has taken a lot of work this year just because of the sheer shift to an online environment. I would say that's definitely beefed up some of the roles she's played, but every year the VP Comms continues to amaze us all, and I think she's done some great work. So I'll pass on last to myself. I won't go too into depth of what I do. I kind of jump everywhere because of my governance role, but I manage the finances of the organization. I am the CFO in reference to the organization. So I am accountable to council and then also interact with board from a more staff piece and represent some of the conversations around where the money's going, how student fees are collected, and then also interact with the policy manual. If you ever get a chance, don't read the policy manual because it's way too long, but I do recommend reading through it if you want a better identification. I think bylaw 1 outlines the structure fairly well. So I'll cut it at that for explaining the positions. There's a lot, so ask more questions if you have them. Okay, and I'll throw it to Jeff if you want to take this one over.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. And does anyone have any questions so far, or are we? I can't see everyone's face, so I'll just assume that silence is excitement. So for my role, if everybody's following along, I report day to day into the president, who is one of the directors on our board. And then it's the board of directors themselves as an entity or a body that actually is the one that can, to put it bluntly, and I'm not trying to be crass, but like they're the ones that fire me or hire me or otherwise, right? I get direction from all of the executive because that's just how it works. But I think to insulate the organization in general from some of the fluctuations that could happen with that yearly turnover, although I've never experienced it, every single executive, and I'm not just saying that, has always been great, is to have that board there to insulate the organization from any of those, the turmoil. That being said, like I said, I've never experienced it, and I report into the president, who is the CEO. So now you've heard how many different monikers for that position: director, counselor, president, CEO. Like there's lots of different hats that the president wears. But we try and simplify it really down to the fact that we all work together. These 6 boxes that you see in front of you are kind of representative of the 6 senior managers who report to myself. So if you see myself as that singular point, I actually see it as like the bottom because the crap rolls downhill. But like under my position, I hate the boss terminology and all that, so I'm struggling here. But like there's 6 senior managers who are, as I say, are those specialists. So Melissa falls under advocacy and government services, but Nick Sove is that senior manager who, when there's a senior manager, an issue at that, exec and senior management level, Nick would take that, work with Melissa, come up with a solution, bring it back up to the team, and then provide that. Financial services, something, yeah, financial services, information technology. So that's our in-house IT department, hospitality services, Wave, Spoke, Western Film, people in development, which is HR. It started as HR and it's really grown into this incubator for students where you see coordinators and interns and associates, and some of you have probably gone through that, and trying to build and develop students. And then once they leave Western, so once Mark graduates and moves on, how do we stay in touch with Mark so Mark can come back and talk to the next Mark St. Pierre that wants to integrate with the organization. Mark came in with a specific set of, soft, maybe wasn't involved directly with the associate program, but kind of came in with, eyes wide open and really smart. So next time we have a person with that same sort of parameters that are coming into this position, we'll get Mark to come back and talk to that person and be like, hey, just ask lots of questions. It's going to be cool, man. That sort of thing. Right. And then the promotions and commercial partnerships. So that's promos and our other things like all the different partnerships that we have, sponsorship, et cetera, et cetera. And then operations. So this term, and I did this last year, Melissa, I don't know if you remember this, but like, which we decided to leave it on there, operations. The operations don't really operate as you would see, like the Spoke is really not like a restaurant out in the real world. They're not out there trying to make the most amount of money that they can. Same with the Wave. I mean, Western Film is probably one of the best sources of entertainment on campus for people that maybe, it's not alcohol based, or it's not like, it's a great thing to do on a Tuesday night kind of thing. And then there's the Purple Store, which provides more than just what the storefront is. There's also like all the gear that's provided for orientation week, or floorwear, or all of that other type of specialty swag. These operations they're an operation because they do provide for our bottom line, but more importantly, they do provide a service to students. And that service level ranges widely. If we take the Spoke, it really doesn't have as much of a service component as what the Wave does. The Wave does a lot of things that just straight up lose money, but we do it because it's good for a club. We're opening up one night because Theatre Western wants to do a practice run in there. There's no business model for it, but we're doing it. And then you look at something like the Mustang Lounge, which literally has no revenue capabilities and is a straight service. So there's sort of a dial of revenue generation, which a lot of people dial into the operation and want to say, well, yeah, we got to maximize profitability and all the rest of it. And that isn't always the case. And I say that as a cautionary tale because I've seen many, many elections where people will say that, like, hey, my dad, he runs all the KFCs in Toronto, and I bet you we could make a whole bunch of money doing this. And then when they get in, they go, oh, that's not what this is about, actually. In fact, part of the reason that the cheapest pop you can get on campus is at the Spoke is because we're trying to keep the price lower at Center Spot. We're not trying to make the money that they are, if that makes sense. We exist in a way for twofold, I think. Not only to provide the service of food on campus that's more affordable than Center Spot or whatever other the options might be, but also the idea that when administration sees, and I'll use Matt, sees Matt walking through the Spoke talking to all those students, and then next thing Matt's in a meeting saying, we have a problem on campus with situation X, whatever it might be, it makes administration kind of stand up a little bit more and go like, listen, he has the masses behind him of people, right? If we decide to put up table talkers and posters in the Spoke that say administration doesn't care about you because of this, that scares them. That's leverage in a sense, if that makes sense. So there's a whole bunch of other reasons for these things. When they created them many, many, many years ago, like before myself, obviously, it was because initially we were an advocacy-based organization, and there were 8 people sitting in a room buried in a building somewhere that, quite frankly, weren't getting any face time with the senior admin. Well, now the more relevant we are to the student body, the more relevant we are to the senior admin, and therefore the voice of the students goes that much farther. So if that makes sense, it's a little bit of a balance.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much more to really explain on any of those. If anyone has any questions about them or want to go into any more detail, we employ a ton of students. I think, not this year, but like if we look, and you can't really even use last year because we lost a couple of our busiest months, but generally there's about, you know, $500,000 to $700,000 worth of salaries that go back into students' pockets being employed in these places. So it's a great place to have a job, to build a community, to make peer-to-peer connections and all those sort of things out of them.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll add, Jeff, just from a club's perspective of how operations are helpful, is if I have a club that walks to me and says, I want to run an event and I want this, this, and this, we have majority of the operations are able to facilitate that conversation or have some sort of support for that without them having to outsource it. And it makes things a lot cheaper for students, and it gives the ability to control some of what's going on. And that's kind of where the big pluses for having operations is we want to support students in the best way we can, and having these operations that are able to do these can support them that way. So that's like the reason for them.
Anyone have any questions or any interesting facts? That's usually one where people are like, you know, could we use margarine instead of butter? Like, or I don't know. Okay.
Awesome. I'll jump back into the council now. Awesome. So council is kind of the core democratic institution of the USC. We have a few members of council here with Emily, obviously as a voting member. So there's 49 student representatives elected by each constituent. So you'll see faculties, all the affiliates with the USC on the call. You have professional schools. So you have like med, dent, law, education, all represent under the USC. And then obviously Jeremy with SOGS has the graduate side of that. So we cover that side of campus. So it brings a student voice and student perspective. So we have monthly council meetings. It depends on where the legislative council or calendar falls. I think we have 3 meetings in January, February, but then we don't have one in December. So it depends on what happens there. But most of how council is set up is you'll have a standing committee meeting, which kind of divides council into 3 different groups. And then all the motions are vetted through those standing committees. And then it's passed on to council for council to vote on kind of the more legislative agenda kind of piece of that. A lot of that is where the executive gets to talk about what we've been doing, how we've been interacting with different groups on campus, and some of the work we've been doing in our roles. And that's kind of where that showcase comes out. And you'll see we have executive council, and that kind of ties into council as a whole. And that's where the representative and the voice comes from at the end of the day. So it kind of provides the directive. So if council wants the motion for adding something on campus and they want us to advocate for it within the rec center, that will come through a council motion. And that's something that we've had in the past, and it continues to be an important role. So I saw bylaw 1's referenced here. I won't go into bylaws because it's a deep path of policy, but they're meant to be an representative election, and it's Western undergraduate students. And they're all outlined by terms of reference and obviously salaries and disciplines. And it's all accountable to the executive officers are all accountable to council at the end of the day. No matter what the board is, no matter what the staff is, council is our core institution. And that's what I'll echo in my job forever. And I know Declan also echoed that, and I'm sure Andrew echoed that as well. So that's kind of where we get our bread and butter from, and that's where a lot of the elections and you'll see the representation within council and the student population happens. So we'll call it there. Melissa, yeah, I was just about to reference the legislative calendar. So I'll kind of walk through a day in the life or the month in the life of a counselor. So obviously the election happens. So if you're going through like a council kind of session, you'll have the standing committee meetings will happen. You'll have an agenda call, and then it'll close the agenda within a couple of days. And so once the agenda call is closed, you'll have your standing committee meetings where all the motions will be vetted to the standing committees. And then the standing committees will be able to vet kind of what goes to council in the next meetings. So you'll see here, we have the fall reading week kind of breaks up the agenda deadline piece of that. And then so you roll into the ACOSC meeting, which is the agenda meeting that all the chairs of the standing committees go to. And that's where the vetting of the motions happens. And then you jump to the actual council meeting, which is the full meeting. Obviously, we're all virtual this year, but usually we do it in the community room of the UCC. And you'd have all the counselors come in, all the executive would be there, and we'd have a number of presentations. That's where most of if there's administration that has to present to the student at large, that's where that happens at the council meetings. But the standing committees are there to help vet some of the content and the business that goes to the meetings. And that's where my role comes in, is I help kind of decide on the jurisdiction of what roles and what motions are coming forward and what business needs to be done by council, and then what needs to be done by the board as well. And that's the reason for the governance role of my job. Melissa, is there anything you want to add on council? I know you deal directly a lot with them, so.
I council is that students sometimes underestimate just how much they can actually accomplish on council. So my only plug on this, and because it's my job to plug on this, if you're thinking about running, do it. Like, I think it is, you have an opportunity to have a huge influence on the student experience. And it is a lot of work. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. You have at least one standing committee meeting, for sure a council meeting every month, except for December. But I think it's a really great learning opportunity. It's a great networking opportunity. You have access to people and to networks and information that you wouldn't have otherwise, and you can really help kind of expand that to students as well. So that is my big plug on that one. If you have any questions though about council process or how any of that stuff works, I live and breathe that most months, so I am happy to help with that.
Is there any questions about council at all right now? Because I know that's a strong engagement piece for the USC. Yeah, awesome. Switch to the next one, Melissa. I can preface board of directors, and then Jeff, I don't know if you want to hop in on that after. So the board of directors, it's kind of a, I don't think a lot of people that engage with the USC know. That's like the one group a lot of people I know don't know about. That's where Matt was talking about the board of governors and board of directors, the confusion at the beginning. It's just because the board of directors functions very effectively in the realm they are, but you won't see them engaging a lot with the student body itself. But they are student board of directors. So we have, I believe, 8 directors that sit on the board, and they also have their own committees. So you have a governance committee, a finance committee, and then an HR committee. And they interact directly with staff in those committees that all go to the board of directors, and is all vetted through a chair through that end. A lot of them have a lot of board experience. So it's a similar setup of a board to the Fortune 500, but I always tell people we're not a Fortune 500. We are a council at the end of the day, and this all their power is delegated through a council, and that's where their fiduciary responsibility comes from. Jeff's role as a COO is accountable to the board of directors in the way it's set up, but again, he answers directly to Matt, who is a director on that board. So that's kind of the where the setup comes from. A lot of it is managing the financial and reputational risk, and then also legal risk as well. So they deal mostly with our lawyers, and kind of like Jeff had said, sober second thought, it says it right there in the slide deck. So Jeff, do you want to add anything on the jurisdiction of the board and how that interacts?
Not really. Like, that really does cover it. I mean, the big thing to note here is this was a deliberate thing, separating this from council and the executive to make sure that they can focus on, like, they might be advocating for something that makes it harder for the board of directors. So if Mark was, and in the past, the executive were the board, how do you advocate to put on a big concert that might lose you a bunch of money when, as a director, you shouldn't be making that decision? If you get what I'm saying, like, it creates a dynamic that was almost impossible, and allows them to do their job. These are all students. I can't really think of anything else that might, it's not like I go to this group as it says in the second line and go like, okay, so what should I be doing? We really, Mark, Matt, and I, and the senior managers that support the group, come to that group with this is what our plan is, and this is how we want to achieve what it is we're looking to do. The difference is they can't fire Matt if it goes wrong. They can fire me, right? So it's like making sure that all our ducks are in a row, and that we're united. But in no way, shape, or form does this group come, whether it as the chair or otherwise, and be like, so Jeff, I was thinking you could do this work for me. They can do that in a board setting, and they can say, we'd like a review of our investment strategy or whatever, or we want to talk about diversity and inclusion within, and we'd like a report on that. Great, yeah. And they task management or myself, and management means it could be anyone. It could actually be Mark, or it could be one of the senior managers, but they hold me ultimately accountable for that. So it's a great system that works really well for all the bodies. It just requires some good understanding of how it works so that everyone stays in their lane.
Yeah. And Jeff, that's a good point. I think the one comment I'll add is, so Matt is a voting director, and then my role, like Jeff said, is more management. So I come in from a finance governance role. So I sit on the board as a support, similar to a senior manager would, but then I kind of act as an executive in that way. So that's where my role comes in. And then you'll see the board. I think the one thing that a lot of people don't know is we do oversee the Gazette as well, through a separate committee. So it's a weird one that I don't think I even knew coming into the role, but the Gazette is a part of the board as well. And they treated that as an objective body. So is there any questions on the board? Because that's the one that I know a lot of people don't see directly. No. Okay, cool. Awesome. Matt, did you want to take back over this, or do you want me to keep going?
I'll hop on CIA, and then if there's anything you want to hop in on there. Sorry, that ended a little bit early, so I figured I'd slide back in for a little longer. Yeah, but again, that was I guess I didn't really have anything to add either on the board. I think spoken well is one of the other Mitch Pratt loved to use the term like wearing many hats, and his hat analogy was something that was always a bit of everyone liked to chirp him for, but again, one of the kind of hats that the roles do have to play and wear, and all the different kind of bodies we serve on. So, but I guess kind of within another area, and I'll dive into the slide you're looking at, is the CIA, as we like to refer to it as, which means coordinator, intern, associates. It's just the fun way to use the acronym to our advantage. So for those of you who haven't been made aware of these roles, these are in essence like the student employees, for lack of a better term, that work with most directly with the executive, with the only exception being interns that mainly will work kind of from a staff side. They have like a staff oversight person, but there are some exceptions to that, and some that kind of do both. So I guess to focus there, the associates or associate vice president is the term we're running with this year, given the restructure of last year, where it went from, instead of like secretary treasurer or SPO or anything along those lines, it's all VP of blank or VP blank. So we've now tried to go AVP for consistency's sake. So there's AVPs that serve under all the vice presidents. So Mark has 3, and then coordinators that fall underneath him. I have no AVPs because obviously working with like the executive team, but so then the AVPs then, and also there's kind of varying uses and rough structures of the coordinators within each portfolio, with ones such as like ethnocultural support services or international student support services being ones that have a very active and large group within them. But then coordinators within other portfolios kind of do different types of work. So, but with all that said, as you can see, there's many examples of the coordinators that we have. You can see the list written there. But roughly the structure is kind of a vice president, then an AVP, and the coordinators kind of serve within the AVP portfolios, and there's kind of, it all kind of fizzles down from there. And then with our interns, there's ones that you may be more familiar with, depending on kind of your interactions with the USC historically, whether that be like our CRO, DRO within elections, or like our speaker or our deputy speakers if you're a council person. We also have recently hired, we've been building out our communications department recently. So there's been a lot of new interns hired for graphics and social media. So there's been some incredible student artists that have been brought on in the past couple months. So if you've noticed our social media presence looking a little bit better, or a lot better in my opinion, that's a lot to thank for our incredible student talent. Thanks, Jeremy. But it's a lot to thank to the incredible talent that exists on our campus. So I guess with all that said, I can definitely go into, maybe this is a place to pause for a moment too, to see if anyone has any questions of CIA, anything there, because there's a lot of different roles. There's a lot of different places they all wear. Also, before questions, Mark, did you want to hop in? I know you obviously are one that has AVPs and coordinators directly within you. So if you have anything to add, feel free.
I would just say they do, like, if we get some credit as VPs, I would say the AVPs need a lot more credit because they do a lot of the groundwork, and they do, like, Haley's on the call right now, and she's one of the best AVPs we've had. So I would say, like, I think all our AVPs are very, very talented. So, and Parker obviously as well. Parker's on as AVP.
And Calista was.
And Calista was too. Calista's the third one. So we have a number of very talented individuals. I'd say I love my AVPs. They're great people to talk to or even chat with. They're still students. They all are extremely talented. So it's one of the better programs we run, and I think it's been a great success moving forward. So that's all I'll add.
Can I chime in on this one real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
So one of the reasons that we put this slide in here to begin with is that sometimes, especially with counselors, they run when what they're really interested in is doing work that's more associated with a coordinator, an associate, or an intern. And so we just wanted to make really clear for people who are interested that there are other opportunities within the USC, and that if you're looking for really hands-on work, council is probably not the best route to get there. And so we would just kind of want to make sure people know that there are options to do that, so that we don't end up with people who are on council really frustrated or apply for a coordinator role when they really are better suited for a council role. So I just want to flag all of that.
No, that's a really good point, Melissa. And honestly, something too that I like, not that I like to speak much of regrets, but like is something that I wish I took advantage of when I was an undergrad, is becoming an AVP or a coordinator or something along those lines. I was just not as aware of, I wish I was, of these programs, but it's an incredible ground for people to get experience and learn about the USC in certain lenses, right? As Melissa said, there's council, there's these more employee type roles. So would 100% recommend. Obviously, if you're running for roles, then that's a different story. But I guess we'll pause there too. Does anyone have any questions just on that? Because there is a lot within these student roles. If anyone has anything. Okay, great. Oh, Jeff, did you want to hop in?
No.
Oh, sorry, I just saw you go off mute. So I guess we can move to our next slide then. And then, yes, and I guess what this kind of leads into is then the, what does this, everything that I've spoken about, what Mark, what Jeff, what Melissa have all spoken about today is like, what does this actually mean for the students that serve or work kind of underneath the USC's purview or anything along those lines? And to the next slide is we will go through a few kind of examples. The next one being, I believe, advocacy, if I'm not mistaken. There we go, perfect.
Matt, if I can interrupt for a minute. Jeremy raised his hand.
Oh, sorry, Jeremy, go for it.
No, that's okay. It's a question that just came to my mind on the previous thing about the interns for like speaker and deputy returning officer, all that. I was just wondering who does the hiring for those positions? As being, or for all of these, I guess, associates are hired, not elected. So I was wondering, like, is there a specific kind of hiring body, or is it a rotating different committee?
They're all slightly different.
Okay.
I actually had the first intern who Matt got to meet a little while ago. And that intern was when I was in food and beverage running the Wave. And that was something where I just hired them myself. And then it grew into like this program because actually it was super rewarding. I would give that person credit for our ability to do concerts right now. The fact that, we almost had ASAP Rocky, or like, all the shows that we came directly from him teaching me more than I taught him. So it's really a two-way street. So interns are like staff, but quite often it comes from inputs from the executive, so they might be tied to it. So for example, Matt referenced that Cam hired some of the graphic interns, and that comes from the constraints that we have we unionized environment as well as a management environment. So we have both. We have a QP section as well. Associates and coordinators are just the executive hired, and I believe it's just, you guys just get to pick, right? And just go through it with Kate.
Yeah, with some of PAD, like people in development, and then like with the support of that plus the exec, and then they're chosen that way.
And if I'm going to be honest, the interns usually have an output of what they're doing that can be publicly criticized. So in other words, they're either doing, like, you see CRO, DRO, you have people doing graphics work, you have people doing like actual like staff function-ish type work that could be criticized, which is where the staff step in and like take that blame and like, okay, well, we'll do better and I'll get them. We don't want to have the interns have a bad experience, but it's kind of more staffish type work. Whereas associates and coordinators are doing more of that generative kind of creating ideation, like let's research this policy paper and like, what are they doing in master, or what are they doing? So they are different. And each year they do the roles slightly change as well. Like they get little tweaks based on what we were doing in the year before. Does that seem like a good answer, Matt and Mark?
Yeah, that
All
sounds
right.
great. I know my gut reaction to that was it depends on the role, but I think that was more eloquently said. So thanks, Jeff. Perfect. Yeah. So as we were just there for kind of like, what does it all mean and everything there. I guess these are some of the examples that we like to use. Some of like more historic examples, but ones that the USC has kind of pushed for, and as we have seen kind of within one of the big facets that the USC does, like, yes, there's a lot of, I think in this session, you hopefully have learned a lot about kind of the operations and some of those sides that may not be maybe as visible, or maybe you may not understand as much, but within kind of the more direct sense of like student advocacy and student government and things along those lines, we have all of our roles do advocacy one way or another, but we do kind of have like the wings such as like Mackenzie, Victoria, and myself, who are more kind of the direct advocate roles per se. But as I said, all three do their own forms of advocacy and work in different forms. But I guess as you can read through these examples here, there's like, for example, Fall Reading Week, year-round bus pass, the sexual violence policy review that happened last year. There's been a lot of kind of these big kind of more glamorous wins. Even I guess one you might be able to see that's a little bit more fun is possibly the bringing back of our beloved homecoming to a certain date. There's been a lot of work that has been kind of in a variety of areas. Whether as you can see, there's an immense diversity of all these wins here. But and then these are the more kind of large graspable ones. But on a daily basis, that's a lot of what we do, and as well as what our counselors are doing. There's an entire stream and network of this advocacy that is all that the USC is a large reason why we're here, is to just make sure that the voices of students are A, being given the microphone if at all possible, but then B, if there's tables that they aren't able to necessarily be at, to try and carry that voice as best we possibly can. So there's it's incredible that what this organization can do. And as I said, being someone that was kind of, as I started in first year to then my kind of more rapid trajectory into where I am today, kind of through my third year, fourth year, and this year, learned how incredible this organization really is and what it's accomplished in its past few years. So so I guess does anyone have anything they want to add there? Mark, Jeff, anything there? Perfect. Does anyone, and again, if anyone has any questions, obviously feel free to pop in. Perfect. Okay, so I guess these can kind of go to anyone. Maybe Mark, because I guess you've been working, these have been a lot of your lead files this year. If you're comfortable, I'd love you to take these.
Sure. So at the USC, we offer a number of services. Jeremy could probably echo some of this conversation of SOGS is a number of these things as well. But we offer, it's 4 brackets, but I think there's a number of further services. This is just like more benefit-based stuff than anything. So the health and dental plan, obviously Purple Care, you saw this year roll out. That was under my preview. It had happened, it started last year. So that's something we do. I think it still says student benefits on it, which is kind of funny. But that needs to be, the slide deck needs to be changed. But we rolled out a new health and dental plan. So it includes coverage for a number of different options for students. So it has prescription jobs, counseling, all the tutoring services. Oh, interesting. Eye care. I think I was just looking at some of the changes in coverage. So we have the health and dental plan, and it also has the dental piece of it. So it's kind of the 2 fees you see on your fee bill. I think that's kind of the separation there that you'll see. And that's kind of where those 2 come from. We have a board of trustees that was elected through council that represents our student body on that end and does a lot of the health and dental plan. It's all student-based. Myself, Jeff, and Carla all sit on it, and Matt is a resource for it as well. And they make decisions in line with the student body, and it's a 10 group of students. So that's where that comes from. And then transportation, obviously the LTC, it was a more controversial topic this year. I will recognize that, but it's something that we do strive to work on with LTC. It's kind of a municipal relationship that Mackenzie holds, and then I deal a lot with the contract side of it. So you'll see, but then you'll see transportation also falls under Mustang Express, which we run for nightly shuttles, and also is a good service to students. And then affiliate shuttles with Brescia, Huron, Kings. It's a great resource we use. And then also Greyhound services, which you sell through the Purple Store. We sell tickets for that. So it's just something to provide to our students. And then the last 2 will fall under Hannah's portfolio of peer support services. The peer support model has obviously been a priority this year. It was listed in our roadmap, and it's something that we want to provide a holistic approach to how we provide wellness to students. And that's kind of the goal of what the peer support model is. And it's something that we work with students on, and they get trained on. It's a good resource for students to get, and also to maybe learn some skills on how to support students in different ways. And that's something we pride ourselves on. And the last is Jeff had mentioned the food bank earlier, mentioned on Google. It's a great way for students to maybe get some access to resources they never thought they could, or look to get some donations to the community and support the students that they have in their community. So I'll throw it back to Matt if you want to add anything on food support or peer support.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think that was perfectly said. I guess the main things is that peer support and food support are both offered this year too, which was incredible to see. A lot of work is done by the respective, there's an AVP who is the lead on the peer support, but then there's a coordinator who leads food support. And so the amount of work that it took to bring these online and kind of adjust them to the times, as when we all know our September was a rapidly changing month. But I'm extremely proud of that effort that was able to still provide the support and be ready to kind of roll with the punches and still be here for our students. So those are two incredible services that we offer. And as with all of this is that when you see that the USC is pretty robust, as you may be learning today or have already known, and that's great as well, that the USC has been able to really grow into being this very large scale organization that is able to cover so many things that are such important pieces of student lives, and ones that they may not always know are touched by the USC every single day. But whether it's them like busing from their home downtown to then go and get some whatever prescription drugs they need from the drugstore that are covered through their health plan, there's something that even in a day that you may not necessarily realize, the USC tries to be there as much as we possibly can. So that's what all of this kind of plays into, is just that support that and to tie it all the way back to what Jeff said at the very, very beginning of the mission being to enhance the educational experience. So see how we did that there. It's nice and smooth, but it's kind of that inside and outside the classroom. We are always there for our students. And I guess we can go to our next. But yeah, so I guess kind of the last little bit here is kind of in summary and in wrap up, is that there are hopefully you're grasping from this, there's so many different opportunities for anyone to get involved within the USC organization. Obviously, with you all being here, there's likely an interest in probably one of three roles, if not maybe a couple of three roles, or maybe just for general interest, and that's great as well. But what we're kind of hoping that you can take away too is that even recommending to friends, or understanding that if your friends are looking for involvement or things like that, it's such important context for you all to have. And as you can see, all the if you wants, there's so many different ways that can kind of be your why. And then there's the places that you can look for, and all that list that you can see in the middle of the screen there. And then I guess kind of the overarching is that there are any number of kind of doors that you can knock on to request more information. There's obviously the four of us who are here before you, whether it's Melissa, Mark, myself, Jeff, any number of the executives. There's so many different emails that you will never hit a wrong door. You may hit one that might direct you to another. They might say, hey, maybe that's actually a better question for Cam Wong. But regardless, hey, what's up? Glad to talk to you for at least 2 minutes. Head that way. So it's there's a lot of options here, and I guess that's what we're trying to really articulate, is that we're just so excited that you had the interest to come to this session and also listen and hear and understand more about what we do and who we are. So I believe the next slide is Carla. Yeah. So if you want any more information about even like the hirings or anything along those lines, Carla Pacheco is our head of, we call it People in Development, PAD, but in more kind of like common terms, I guess it's kind of an HR-esque role, and she's the lead there. So she's kind of also one of the people who just is all-encompassing and knows so many different aspects of our organization, and she is just incredible. So, so there's her contact there. And then I believe the next one is just our follow-up dates. So so then I guess from there you can see there was one that we ran on, I'm blanking on the day, I believe it was Monday if I'm not making this up, but there was a campaign school session just kind of about how to start running and where do you kind of begin. We obviously had this one, which we're so glad to have you all here with us, and then you can follow that timeline forward for kind of what the next month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks looks like for each of you, and what more sessions you can dive into. So I guess that's kind of the main thing I would leave off with. Mark, Jeff, Melissa, anything to add in kind of off the kind of parting notes? And then obviously we'll go to questions after, but does anyone else have anything they want to add?
I'll just plug my governance one next, the 26th. If you want to come talk to me about jurisdiction, let me know.
The only thing I will add is that we are recording all of the sessions as well. So if you know people who weren't able to be here, but you think should be here or might have wanted to be here, please let them know that this is an option. I'll send out the recordings to everyone. It looks like you all said that you want follow up on the sign-in forms, so I will go ahead and send those out once I've got them ready to go. I do have a feedback form as well that I'm going to throw in there if you have a minute, but otherwise, that's all I have. Just that I'm glad you're here.
Amazing. And I just, as reference, I have to pop out again at 3:15. So if there's, we'll leave it open obviously for questions for the rest of the time slot with Jeff, Mark, and Melissa. But while I'm here for the last 90 seconds, does anyone have any questions I can help with before I depart? That is totally fine if not. Okay, unreal. Well, I will leave you all to it. And obviously if there's anything that you think of once I'm gone or anything there, obviously you can Facebook, email, I think you all know the drill. I will gladly respond to any of that. So with that, it was so nice to see you all on Zoom, and hopefully this was helpful for you all, and I will see you later. So thanks everyone.
Matt. Was there any questions from anybody else? I know Jeremy, you came for some governance questions, so I'm curious if that'll help the rest of the group. If you have any questions, I don't know if from your end.
Oh, sorry. No, this honestly, this was more for just a general overview type of, this is really informative. If other more specific things, I'll certainly follow up with either yourself or Melissa or Jeff about specifics, but this is really useful. So.
Oh, awesome. The USC is a lot, so yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
One little caveat that I'll put in is all of you had ideas coming into this. You clearly want to get involved. And if anything that we said made you go, I didn't know that wasn't something that we do. There is nothing that we don't do. And what I mean by that is let's say you came into this conversation thinking, I want to lower the price of pop at Center Spot. And I'm using that intentionally because I couldn't think of another example that I'd used earlier. I guess that's not what they do. Well, we do it because we will advocate, or we will create a campaign around reducing the price of pop at the Spoke and it's like a text message to the hospitality people to be like, we got to have a meeting because we're coming after your pop. And they'll get in a room with us and be like, well, what works best for us? Like, wouldn't it be better if we were all the same price? And we'd be like, yeah, you got to make your price lower. So my point is, just because you might have heard that we don't do it, it doesn't mean we can't advocate for it. It doesn't mean we can't partner on it. It doesn't mean that we can't take that voice of that thing that is important to you that you want to put on a platform and drive forward in another way. It's just a matter of figuring out what the why is of what you're doing it for, and then figure out which route the USC is able to accomplish that in. And so that's why don't take anything as like, oh, I guess that's not important or not. Everything's important. It's just a matter of the big reason for these sessions where we were getting a lot of people creating platforms, like literally presidential platforms that were like, we're going to serve lasagna in the residences and we don't have control over the residences. Like, that's not us. And so then that presidential person or the slate or whoever was going to get elected, they would feel, it's not a good feeling to not know what it is. So in the interest of getting good, intelligent platforms and really refining that student voice and driving it forward in an intelligent way, as soon as you put a platform out, as soon as you put your hat in the ring, Western admin are watching. They're watching it all. They're scanning the Gazette. They're scanning everything you do on social media to figure out what's coming next. And that is the power that the USC has, is that we influence them just by existing. Does that make sense? So don't change your voice, but reach out to Mark or Matt, myself, or whoever it might be, Melissa, Carla, and let's try and figure out what that is. We're not going to give you ideas, but help you get to a good, solid platform that gives you a good chance at coming forward with that idea.
I'll also take a minute to plug our session on Friday, which is developing a platform. So Matt and Victoria are going to share some tips and tricks for how they went about it. I've been working on the slide deck today, so it should hopefully be very helpful if it's not something you've done before. And like Jeff said, they're not going to tell you what to write, but they can help give you some ideas of how to approach whatever the issue is that you want to tackle. That'll be Friday at 1:30.
Any questions at all from anyone? Like there are no silly questions, trust me.
Anything.
I have a quick question. So I know that last year the kind of way that people were elected changed. So like, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but as far as the VPs being elected, how does that kind of go about, since it's not like by the student body?
Yeah, so I can explain it. And Melissa, I don't know if you want to talk on timeline after, because I know it's changed a little bit. I passed the bylaw, so I should know it too. So The change from happened last year was they split. So the VP, it used to be a PVP. So it was the president, vice president were both student at large elected. So they'd run on a platform. So I don't know if you remember Bardia and Kat, they ran together. So that's been split now. So it's just, so this year you just saw Matt get elected as student at large, and the VP got split into 2 roles. So you'll see that Mackenzie and Victoria are now the 2 VPs, and that's kind of like the 2 groups. So the student at large election still happens for the president. So you'll see that happens throughout the beginning of January and into February. And then you'll see after that happens, we'll have the VP, which will go through internal, which is through council. So you'll, at the AGM, I believe it's March 7th, you'll have an election that happens there with both the incoming and outgoing group of council that elect the 2 VP internals and, University Affairs. I keep saying internal because it's easy. University Affairs and external. And that happens at the council meeting. And so you'll campaign the 2 weeks before that, which will happen I think the nominations close right at the end of reading week, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the process is very similar for the VP elections as it is to the rest of the at-large elections. It's more the internal versus kind of at-large piece. Yeah. So nominations for the VP elections will open the day after results night. So you'll know who the president is, you'll know who else has been elected to council. You still have to fill out the same nomination form, get signatures, pay a bond, all of that stuff. You have 3 weeks to make up your mind. So you have 3 weeks to get your nominations in. Mark is right, it's the Friday of reading week. We'll have an all candidates meeting that evening. It'll be Zoom based just to make sure everyone understands what the rules are. And then campaigning will start the next day and goes until March 6th. And then at the AGM, all of the candidates have a little bit of time to, if they haven't had a chance to talk to counselors and do that consulting work, they have a minute to speak. And then there's a question and answer period as well. And then it is a ranked ballot vote.
That was a good question. It's split fairly recently, so. Awesome. All right, if there's no other questions, I think we're good. Melissa, to wrap. Is that all good? Okay, awesome. Jeff, any other comment, Jeff, on your end, or all good? Okay, great.
Nope.
Great, sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Please stay engaged as much as possible. I know I say that every student I meet with, stay engaged, ask questions. It will never be a bad question, so.
You're here on Monday, you also know how relieved I am anytime people show up for these things. I'm always like, yes, people came. So thank you for being here. And yeah, it's great. I hope you see you at some of the other sections as well.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.